Disco Elysium might just have the best writing I've ever seen in any video game. Might. The only game that I think may best it is Red Dead Redemption 2 because the story and characters in that game are some of, if not the best that I've ever seen. I mentioned recently in my Hotline Miami video that I've slowly become disillusioned with AAA video games as they continue to release in shoddy, unfinished states, especially if PC is where you like to play video games. This has caused me to turn my attention to indie games. I'm someone who doesn't play many indie games. I've played a couple like Hollow Knight and A Plague Tale Innocence, but generally I've always stuck to AAA games because I like to get sucked into these big worlds with larger than life characters and stories. Indie games are just generally a little too short for me personally, as I like to spend as much time as possible with a video game. However, as I said, in recent years AAA games have started to take the mick, and it's made me turn my attention to the smaller scale but still impressive indie scene. Whilst I clearly don't pay much attention to the indie scene, there was always one game that I had my eye on, and it was Disco Elysium. I know this might not be what some people want to hear from someone who plays games, but gameplay is not my favourite aspect of video games. I'm someone who is much more drawn to story and characters. It's the reason why I love games like Red Dead Redemption 2 and The Witcher 3. It's why Telltale was one of my favourite studios. That doesn't mean that I don't care about gameplay in my video games, it's just that it has to be at such a high standard, such as in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, for it to really hook me. So it should come as no surprise to anyone after finally buying Disco Elysium, a game that I always thought would be right up my alley, and then beating that game, that I now consider Disco Elysium to be one of my favourite games ever. I said in both my Dark Souls and Nier Replicant video that I love those games so much that they may be in my top 10 favourite of all time. I love Disco Elysium so much that I think it may be in my top 5. Disco Elysium is a game without combat. It puts all its chips into story and characters, and fortunately that was the right decision because like I said at the start of the video, Disco Elysium might just have the best writing I've ever seen in any video game. But first, what is Disco Elysium even about? Well, in Disco Elysium you play as a detective who in a lot of ways is a terrible human being. But Disco Elysium is an RPG, so to make sure you can actually roleplay as the character you want to, this detective has done so much drugs and alcohol that he's given himself, hopefully, permanent amnesia. This self-destroying cop has been tasked with solving one murder in the fictional place of Revachol, where he quickly discovers that things are not what they seem to be. Initially, I was really disappointed when I found out that there was only one major case in Disco Elysium. Again, this is due to my nature of wanting to spend as much time with a video game as possible, and the writing in Disco Elysium being of such high quality that I just wanted more. However, Disco Elysium is always able to justify its decisions, and I realised that whilst I may not have got the multiple case storyline that I wanted, I got one major case that was fleshed out to the fullest. Every aspect of this one murder was given the care and polish that it truly deserved. There are so many twists and revelations in the story, but because the writers have taken the time to truly care for what is happening in Disco Elysium, it ends up, again, justifying every twist and revelation that the story throws your way. And whilst there may only be one major case in the game, there are a plethora of well-written side cases that I highly recommend doing, as some of them will even end up intertwining with the main case. And whilst there may be side content, the writing continues to remain strong. The writing also does a phenomenal job of putting you in the shoes of a detective as you hunt for clues and interview suspects. There are so many times where I come up with an idea as to where the case was going, just as my character did, because the story does a great job of drip feeding the right information to you for you yourself to naturally come to that conclusion. Unsurprisingly, the writing and story for Disco Elysium has received universal praise. The only aspect of the story that I heard wasn't universally adored was the ending, although I personally loved it. I can understand maybe not loving the reveal of the true killer. I myself was a little disappointed, but once again, after talking with the killer, I think the game was able to justify this person being the murderer. And while some people might consider the ending to be subdued and a bit of an anticlimax, I, on the other hand, absolutely adored it. The ending to Disco Elysium, in my opinion, is fantastic and acts as a perfect summarisation of your experience with Disco Elysium. It also helps that I got by far the best ending that you can get in this game. This game also does a magnificent job of bringing to life so many compelling but also somehow very individualistic characters. No two characters in this game feel the same. Even the characters in this game who feel like they are there just to flesh out the world feel unique and brimming with actual personality. Some of the characters in this game rank among some of the best characters that I've ever seen in any entertainment medium. Kuno is this little ginger twat that was always such a nuisance and was clearly the byproduct of an unfortunate life, but he was so much fun to talk to and so three-dimensional that I loved whenever my investigation came back to him. Everard Clare was this slimy, disgusting whale of a man. He has this silver tongue and charisma that I ultimately could never decide if I was helping him or hindering him. Titus Hardy was this stubborn, confrontational man, but the more I spoke to him, the more I came to respect and like him. Joyce Messier was a character that I always liked, and she came across as the sort of person who I'd want to receive advice from. Claudia was this hard to read yet beautifully bewitching person who would wrap everyone around her fingers. I still am unsure on what the best approach to her character was. The best thing about these characters is how my relationship changed with them. For example, Titus hated me at the start of the game, but by the end there was genuine mutual respect. Not just from him to my character, but from me to his character. And this transition didn't feel unearned. My character had actually accomplished things worthy of Titus's respect, and Titus had said and done things that made me respect him. Like the story, the characters present here are golden, and every interaction I had with a new character would be so engrossing as I wondered what type of person I was going to communicate with next. However, there is one character in this game that stands head and shoulders above all the rest, and that is Kim Kitsuragi, your police partner. Kim is from a different district and has essentially been forced to partner with you for this case due to the fictional politics of Disco Elysium's world. He's a very serious character, always wanting to deal with the task at hand, and often disliking your character's fascination with going off the beaten path. This seriousness makes Kim such a great foil for your character, as you will most likely pick some silly dialogue options at some point in the game, and leads to great chemistry with the straight-laced Kim. It also results in some genuinely hilarious moments in the game, where Kim essentially gives up in fighting your craziness, and lets you just do what you want. Even funnier is the rare occasion when Kim actually joins in on your shenanigans. There were 2 or 3 moments in this game where I burst out laughing, and they all involved Kim. I'm not someone who usually bursts out laughing. Best case scenario, I let out a little giggle, but these moments actually hit my funny bone, and they wouldn't have had without the great characterization and development afforded to Kim Kitsuragi. It helps that the voice acting in this game is incredible. I applaud the decision to have multiple accents in this game. It really helped flesh out the world of Disco Elysium and genuinely made it feel like a world separate to ours, as in our world you don't usually find such a variety of accents in one place. It also added to the excitement of talking to a new character, as I was always wondering how exactly they were going to sound. There were a few voices that took me off guard, but I always adjusted to them, and by the end of the game I couldn't imagine the characters sounding any different way. Story, characters, voice acting and the animations of the characters really bring the world of Disco Elysium to life. So there's no combat, what is the gameplay of Disco Elysium? Well, I would compare it to 2 things. First, point and click style video games. In fact, Disco Elysium's gameplay is not too dissimilar to the gameplay of my beloved Telltale video games, although it is from a more but not fully top-down perspective. The other would be a choose-your-own-adventure style akin to those old books where you have to jump forward and backwards certain pages to see where your chosen story leads you. These 2 aspects are ultimately what Disco Elysium has to offer. You look around the map, which is much bigger than what you originally believed it to be, with so many nooks and crannies for you to explore. I love how the attention to detail in this game even extends towards this game's environment, but as I was saying, you explore the map and look at certain things and then you click on them. This will either result in a quick bit of text popping up, or instead will lead to an inner conversation with yourself, or even a conversation that will incorporate Kim. The choose your own adventure aesthetic relates to the dialogue trees that you unlock when you speak to other characters. You're a detective, so you want to be thorough when speaking to characters, and you want to get to the bottom of the central murder. Picking certain dialogue options and then acting on or choosing to ignore the information provided to your character leads to this choose your own adventure style of storytelling. This increases tenfold when applied to the side missions. In fact, there is so much for you to choose or ignore to do in this game that you can actually beat the game without even inspecting the victim's body. Now that is impressive. Additionally, there are also these skills that you can apply to your character that open up parts of the game. For example, you can put points into a skill called Visual Calculus, which basically turns you into Sherlock Holmes as you reconstruct crime scenes in your head. There's also this ability called Inland Empire, which is like a spidey sense. It's a supernatural ability that essentially will go, psst, hey, over here buddy, you may want to look in that corner over there. Some abilities are less strange and are easier to understand, like the Encyclopedia skill, which gives you encyclopedic knowledge. But what I love about these skills is how they are useful in conversations and can unlock parts of a conversation that you otherwise may have missed. I also enjoy that these skills can come with unexpected consequences such as paranoia. Because you'll put so many points to level up abilities and make them stronger in conversation, sometimes you can put too many points into a skill and it can lead to that skill leading you too far astray. For example, put too many points into empathy and you may find yourself being led on by someone's lies. One aspect of the gameplay that I did grow tired of by the end was the dice mechanic. I actually think this is a good idea that works in favour of the gameplay. Basically, the dialogue options and actions that link with skills can only be accomplished if you roll a high enough dice score. The more points you put into a skill, or the more information your character accumulates, the easier it will be for you to pass these sections. But my issue is that there were some sections that I really should have passed, but I still lost, and it led to some frustrations because in some cases, it meant that I permanently missed out on parts of the game. By the later points in the game, I just saved before each of these dice roll moments and then just kept reloading the game until I got the desired outcome. It's a very minor issue, in fact it's barely an issue. It's more something that would occasionally be annoying, but in no way prevents this game from being a 10 out of 10, which this game absolutely is. This is one of the greatest, most unique games that I've ever played, and I'm so glad that I finally got around to playing it because it's awesome and I desperately want a sequel to this game. Unfortunately, there seems to be some behind-the-scenes drama occurring with Disco Elysium 2, which I believe is planned to be happening. I do wonder what direction they are planning to go with Disco Elysium 2, since Disco Elysium has 3 different, albeit similar, endings. Personally, I want a direct sequel to this game. I want to go on another adventure with Kim Kitsuragi. I am a little worried about Disco Elysium 2 since some of the people involved with Disco Elysium 1 don't seem to be returning, and those people were instrumental in the quality of this game. However, I will hold out hope that not only will we get Disco Elysium 2, we'll get a Disco Elysium 2 that is worthy of being a follow-up to the first. Disco Elysium is one of the few games that I played that is exactly what I expected and wanted, and lived up to every expectation that I had of it. Not only has Disco Elysium further fueled my interest to playing indie games, it's also given me a stronger fascination of the RPG genre, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more indie games and RPG games showing up on this channel, as Disco Elysium has shown that I can have a strong love for both. If you've not played Disco Elysium, then I strongly recommend that you do, because there aren't many games like Disco Elysium. There are games that have aspects of Disco Elysium, but there are few games that are fleshed out to the max like Disco Elysium was, and you would honestly be doing yourself a disservice if you chose to avoid this game like a plague. Disco Elysium is a masterpiece and undoubtedly an indie sensation.